Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise of the news cycle, look at the sources, and hopefully give you some real insight. And the story we're tackling today, well, it's quite something. It's this claim by Donald Trump alleging Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi called him, personally.
Uh-huh. And not just called, but called to promise India would stop buying Russian oil.
And the phrasing was key, wasn't it? Immediately. For you, only for you.
Yeah, it sounds, almost like something out of a movie. Very dramatic.
Absolutely. Pure performance diplomacy,
Yeah.
tailored for a specific audience back home. But the really interesting part, perhaps, was India's reaction.
Oh, definitely. The Ministry of External Affairs came out with this statement. Very calm, very quick.
Our sources basically called it a diplomatic shrug.
Yeah.
They said, we checked everything. Phones, voicemails, WhatsApp, nothing.
Which, in diplomatic language, is pretty much like saying, who says we even answered? It was incredibly understated compared to the claim itself.
And that contrast really sets up what we want to do here today.
Right. This is our mission for this deep dive, to unpack this whole incident. See it as a clash of, well, two totally different ways of operating.
You've got the performance diplomacy on one side, and then this very pragmatic, very market-focused approach from India. We're calling it Ahmedabadi geopolitics.
Exactly. It's about getting past the drama to the real mechanics underneath.
So let's start with Trump's side. The claim itself, it seems pretty clear it was aimed at, well, scoring political points.
Oh, absolutely. Pure election season material. The goal was that headline. I fixed it. I crushed Putin's oil revenues. Never mind the actual complexities.
Yeah, the performance is the point, not necessarily the long-term policy outcome.
And it completely ignores the reality on the ground. The sources are clear. India became Russia's #1 oil customer back in 2023.
They've been buying huge amounts of discounted Russian crude, essentially propping up Russia's energy exports when others pulled back.
So the idea that a single phone call would just undo all of that, it doesn't really track with the economic incentives, does it?
Not at all. And it clashes with previous U.S. actions, too. Remember the tariffs Trump imposed on India? Like 50% on some goods?
Right, and there was that extra bit, the Russia surcharge.
Which was meant to pressure India specifically on this energy issue?
But again, it shows this sort of disconnect. It's using a trade tool based on political signaling, maybe, rather than understanding the fundamental market forces driving India's decisions.
It's like trying to use a hammer when you really need a calculator. The pressure didn't align with India's core interest, which seems to be, well, the price.
Which brings us to India's side. This idea of Jugaad, that practical, find-a-way mindset comes into play. They see the pressure, and they just navigate around it because the economic logic is stronger.
Okay, so if the U.S. policy under Trump was, let's say, driven by performance and political signals, what's driving India's policy? The sources point to something much deeper, right? Something almost cultural.
Yes, exactly. This is where we get into that core conflict we mentioned, the art of the deal versus something more like deal or the doll, or maybe the art of the chai.
Okay, explain that. Art of the deal? We know spectacle. Negotiation tactics, lawyers, maybe like his casino background influencing things.
Right. It's about the optics, the handshake, the immediate perceived win. But the Indian approach, particularly linked to Modi's background, it's different.
The sources describe him as an oil man by birth, coming from the telecast.
And that's not just trivia, it's significant. The tele community has a long history as oil pressers, traders, merchants, especially in Gujarat, which is famous for its business culture.
So it's suggesting there's this innate understanding of commodities, passed down knowledge.
Kind of. The idea is that growing up in that environment gives you a gut feeling for certain things. The sources mention 3. Viscosity, margins, and market fluctuation.
Okay, margins and market fluctuation. That makes sense. Profit, timing. What about viscosity?
Well, viscosity is about the oil's quality, how thick or thin it is. Different crudes have different qualities, and that affects refining costs and complexity. Discounted Russian oil isn't always the same grade as, say, Middle Eastern oil.
Ah, so you need the right refineries, the right setup to actually profit from the discount.
Yeah.
It's not just about the headline price.
Exactly. It's a deeply practical, technical calculation, not just political.
Yeah.
So this instinct, this tele background, it's about understanding the entire chain, not just the final handshake.
It's like that saying about trying to tell a Marwari businessman, another community known for sharp trading, to pay full price. It just doesn't compute.
Precisely. You can't really out-oil someone with that kind of ingrained commodity sense. And that's the fundamental difference here.
Trump talks about phasing out Russian oil, driven by politics.
While Modi is thinking about phasing in discounts, driven by national economic need. One runs on applause, the other.
Runs on optimizing the supply chain, getting the best possible deal for India's energy needs.
Right. The profit margin, the national interest defined in economic terms, that's the priority. Politics is secondary to that.
And this focus on the margin, on the deal itself, seems to be the core of what the sources are calling the Gujarati doctrine in energy policy.
Yeah, it's more than just being a smart shopper. It's presented as a strategic approach. The sources kind of boil it down to 3 steps.
Okay, what are they?
1, buy low, obvious enough.
Mm-hmm.
2, store high, think strategically. And 3, smile politely when Washington lectures you.
Huh. Okay, steps 1 and 2 make sense. Buy cheap Russian oil. Use India's growing strategic petroleum reserve capacity to build a buffer against future price shocks. That's clear national interest.
Right. Long-term energy security for a massive population.
Isn't there a danger of annoying potential partners like the U.S. by seeming purely transactional, purely focused on discounts?
That's a really good question, and it's where the strategy gets a bit more nuanced.
Yeah.
India manages that risk, according to the analysis, through genuine diversification. They're not just buying Russian oil.
They're keeping lines open elsewhere.
Exactly. They use practical methods, sometimes involving rupee payments or non-Western shipping, to get the Russian oil that's the jugaad again, finding ways around sanctions or obstacles. That's the buy low.
And store high is the strategic reserve part.
Yes, building resilience. But then they also signal openness to others. They told the U.S. they'd consider buying American oil.
If the price is right. I remember that line.
Exactly. Which is
Yeah.
basically saying, we'll buy your freedom crude if you make it competitive. It's maintaining optionality.
So the message is, we're not picking sides politically based on your alliances. We're picking deals based on our needs.
Pretty much. As one source put it, India's not married to Russia, but it's definitely not dating Trump either. The only real allegiance is to the best possible price.
Which loops back to that humorous take on the whole situation.
Yeah, the idea that Modi only promised to stop buying Russian oil when the prices stop dropping.
It's like trying to arm wrestle a calculator, as the sources say.
Mhm.
The economic incentive for India just doesn't align with paying a premium for political reasons.
Not when energy security for over 1 billion people is on the line. The math is just too compelling.
Okay, so we've gone from this almost comical fake phone call story to these really deep principles, cultural trading instincts, national economic strategy. What's the takeaway for someone listening, trying to make sense of these global shifts?
I think the key takeaway is understanding this different kind of power, this Ahmedabadi geopolitics. It's rooted in efficiency, practicality, that jugaad mindset. It's a decentralized competence.
Meaning it's not just top-down government directives.
Right. It's driven by market logic, by millions of calculations happening at the business level, focusing relentlessly on margins and finding efficiencies. And this incident shows that kind of logic can actually push back against or even bypass traditional top-down political pressure.
And it applies beyond just oil trading, presumably.
Oh, absolutely. Think about supply chains. India's role there is huge. The sources joke India invented the person Amazon calls when it breaks. It's that same principle.
Yeah.
Find the most efficient, cost-effective solution, prioritize that over bureaucracy or maybe even sometimes over standard procedures if needed, maximize the opportunity.
So understanding this core logic, efficiency, price, margin above all else, is crucial for anyone trying to grasp trade negotiations, supply chain issues, or really any economic interaction involving India.
I'd say so. They're often operating on a different timeline and with different priorities than, say, Western diplomatic cycles might expect. It's less about the next election cycle, maybe, and more about the next quarterly report or the next 50 years of energy supply.
So to sum it up then, Trump was selling a headline, a performance piece for his base.
While India was focused on, well, securing the actual gasoline, optimizing the real-world supply for its people.
A clash between political theater and hard-nosed ancestral market economics.
Exactly. And that leaves us with the final thought to chew on, something provocative maybe.
Go on.
Well, the source material hints at this potential what-if this practical, hyper-efficient Indian approach, this focus on the best margin, was applied more broadly.
You mean beyond just business and trade?
Yeah. Think about notoriously complex, often bureaucratic global systems. What if that core logic, prioritize efficiency, cut waste, optimize the outcome relentlessly, was applied to something like, say, the Pentagon's budget?
Or NASA's fuel management? Or maybe the conditions the IMF sometimes imposes?
Right. Could that relentless focus on practical competence and optimized margins actually fix some of these huge, tangled problems faster than our current, often politically constrained institutions can? What happens when the logic of the calculator meets global bureaucracy?
That is definitely something to think about, a different lens for looking at global problem solving. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this gave you some useful context next time you see a headline about global economics or geopolitics.